U.S. soybean farmers caught in the middle of a trade war with China, with potential aid for the industry being held up by the government shutdown. Joining us now with more, Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins. Madam Secretary, it's great to have you on. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Good to be on.
What do we need to do? Will aid be forthcoming for farmers? And are you optimistic that when the president meets, presumably next week with President Xi, that they could restart? I mean, I know soybeans got a boost when it looked like that meeting was on. Are you expecting a resumption of exports to China for soybean farmers?
Well, yeah, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. I think the president has been very resolute in his constant work to try to find these markets for all of our great goods all around the country. I mean, the trade realignment that began earlier this year, we've now had massive trade wins all across the world, the UK, the EU, Indonesia, the Philippines, Taiwan, Australia, sort of the list goes on. And for the farmers, for agriculture, no one wins more under that scenario than our farmers. Having said that, when you look at China, specific to soybeans and sorghum and a few other row crops are in there too. You know, China, we had a trade deal with them in 2019. The Biden team came in. They did not require Biden's to that trade deal of China. In fact, we had no new trade deals under the 4 years of Biden, which is part of the problem. One of the big reasons we're here. But to your point, the president, again, even yesterday in the cabinet room, in the meeting he was having, I think with one of the prime ministers, perhaps from Australia, he was talking about how we've got to get soybeans sold out into the world market. And he feels fairly encouraged that he thinks we can get something done. But I will say the biggest point in all of this is how important it is that we continue to strike these trade deals around the world so that our farmers aren't so reliant on one buyer, especially our soybean farmers and especially with China. So we're working on that, too.
But farmers probably do feel like collateral damage because we have so many issues with China. I mean, we could just go down the list with technology and security and Taiwan and all these things. And China manifested that by cutting off entirely. I mean, I know it was slowing a little bit under the Biden administration, but they were still buying soybeans from us. It went to zero at the beginning of the year. None have been sold, I don't think, in 2025. Do you think that in any negotiations we have with China, will that be something that we insist on to arrive at a deal?
Well, I don't want to get ahead, obviously, ever of President Trump and our amazing negotiators, Secretary Bessent, Ambassador Greer, and Secretary Lutnick. They continue to just work literally around the clock on all of this. I do know that as we're watching the markets, as we understand where different countries are around the world. I mean, for example, Japan, in their trade deal, committed to buying $8 billion of goods, including soybeans. When I was talking to Italy, they buy many of their soybeans from other countries, and we thought, we need to be talking about buying soybeans from America. But there's no doubt that we are in a bridge point right now, that the president is working to ensure all these markets are open. But as he moves over to Asia in the next few weeks, and as we have those continuing conversations, we are there to support these farmers. And I know you mentioned at the top of the show, and I think on this show a few weeks ago, Secretary Bessent talked about the potential trade aid package to those farmers who've been hurt under the current trade renegotiation. Once the shutdown lifts, once the Democrats, I think we had 10 votes as of yesterday, once the Schumer shutdown ends, then we'll begin to start moving out some of these programs that are so important to our farmers.
This government shutdown's not helping, Madam Secretary. Jamieson Greer pointed out you can't just take the tariff money and just say, okay, here you go. Congress has to allow that. So then the next thing that would be nice to do is to let farmers get these marketing assistance loans, which Senator Thune wants the administration to do that. But you can't do that because the USDA would have to reopen Farm Service Agency offices, which were closed.
Yeah, look at you. You know what you're talking about. No, that's right. The Farm Service Agency, the FSA offices all over the country are closed right now. These farmers, even if they have checks in hand under some old rule, have to have a USDA signature. We're working to change that moving forward once we get through this as well. But no, it's sort of an unbelievable compromising situation with this government shutdown, not just for our farmers, who of course are our #1 constituents at USDA and frankly the backbone of this country, but for the SNAP program, the food stamp program, which of course we administer, for the WIC program, which we administer, just the running of a massive agency. But back to your point, I thought was so good on the farmers and these loans, this aid that's there. At the end of the day, I think, and I always try to say this, these farmers don't want checks from the government. They want to be able to sell their product. And again, this short-term, bridge that we're building to get us to the next phase, all of these trade deals that the president has struck, every one of them really begin to move into effect beginning next year. But why these loans are so important and this aid is so important right now is why these soybeans are sitting, in piles waiting to be sold while we're waiting on China and other markets. They are already planning for our farmers what they're going to do next year, what their planting season is going to look like. They're halfway through harvest right now. But in order to be able to do that, to secure the loans needed to plant for next year, they have to make sure that they've got the money coming that will allow them to secure the loans for the next planting season. So that's what we're really focused on. This isn't just about our farmers. This is about national security, being able to feed ourselves and ensuring that we've got the products that are necessary and that these farmers have the support that they need.
Can you explain, Madam Secretary, why beef prices have soared and all to get to the point of where we're thinking about importing some beef from Argentina, the same country that's selling all of their soybeans to China? There's a lot of moving parts, and you're always, you're going to make someone mad when you do something. The president's just trying to lower beef costs, but to soybean farmers, that must be like, you're kidding me. We're going to import beef from Argentina when this is the same country and we're helping them out in other ways, obviously, but the farmers seem like the ones that are left out. What about, are we going to do that? Is that feasible, and why? What happened to beef prices? How do we bring them down?
We have had a massive run on beef over the last decade. We've had almost 17% of our producers close, which is about our ranchers, which is about 150,000 ranchers have now stopped ranching. It's a whole other show. We need to describe that. But basically, there's been a massive consolidation, which has not been good for our ranching industry. We have, offshored a lot of that to some companies in Brazil and some other internationally. China owns some other companies. There's a really important realignment that has to happen for us to begin to onshore. When we talk about onshoring and reshoring for manufacturing, we need to onshore and reshore for our beef producers, for our ranchers. So the prices are high. The president is very focused on fulfilling his promise of bringing grocery prices down, but he's also very focused, and you'll hear more from us perhaps in the next day or two, on what we are going to do to incentivize, to open up new lands, to make it easier to become a rancher, to build more processing plants around the country so there aren't just a handful in the middle of the country. We've got a pretty big package coming out. I haven't talked about it publicly. This is the first time, but that'll be coming out very, very soon, again, perhaps this week, and we'll be able to begin to move the onshoring of beef back to America. And of course, as you know, the bigger supply, even aligned with a bigger demand, is going to allow those prices to come down, but also to have a vital industry for these ranchers to be able to survive in, which is what we've got to do.
What about beef from Argentina? Is that a possibility?
Well, the president has mentioned it a couple of times. I think you'll be hearing more about exactly what that looks like. Right now, in America, we consume about 12 million metric tons of beef. 10 million of that we produce here in America, but the 2 million I'm talking about, we've been offshoring. And there's different parts of that, what McDonald's buys in ground beef versus the actual muscle cuts, which is what a lot of Americans, the healthy part of all of this. Here's the other thing that's so exciting for our beef industry is that Bobby Kennedy and my partnership with Making America Healthy Again, a lot of that is going to be moving around the new dietary guidelines around a return to saturated fats and what that means for our protein industry, beef, chicken, et cetera, poultry, pork is really, really, really encouraging. But having said that, we've got to make sure we've got the production to be able to align with that. So, yes, the president has said he's in discussions with Argentina. I think we'll be hearing more about that in the next day or two. But as part of that 12 million metric tons, it will not be very much. Argentina is also facing a foot and mouth disease issue, which we at USDA have to ensure that our livestock industry is secure. And I know you've heard a lot about the screwworm coming up from Mexico. Foot and mouth is a challenge, too. So we're on it. We're on the front lines. We're going to ensure our livestock industry is protected. But this is a very nuanced, very complex market, but that we're moving in every potential possible direction to make sure we've got a good future for these ranchers.